It wasn't Biden per se, Jen, but Biden's labor secretary basically gave away the game that, there will be no $15 minimum wage. Well, excuse me, there will be more talking about it, but there won't be any action per se on a $15 minimum wage. Let's play the clip. This is actually a decent clip for a change. I don't think it's MSNBC. What is it? Peacock Network?
Mehdi
Hassan, who does decent challenging of politicians on his show on Peacock Network. Let's take a look.
Something else that's been missing is a $15 minimum wage, which the president again today said he backs. On Monday, I spoke with your predecessor during the Clinton administration on this show, Robert Reich, former labor secretary, who reminded me that the minimum wage would be $33 an hour if it had kept pace with Wall Street bonuses. It's over $20 if it kept pace with productivity. The president in Cleveland today again talked about a $15 minimum wage, but multiple Senate Democrats voted against it earlier this year. Where do things stand right now on raising it? Are you going to do it for sure in 2021?
We're going to continue to talk about it. You can't do it if you don't have the votes, and it's also making sure that Democrats and Republicans should talk to their constituencies. $15 an hour minimum wage is a wage that, you know, it can barely raise a family on, but it's certainly it's more than double what the current minimum wage is. We need to continue to have these dialogues. The president has been clear, and I support him wholeheartedly on the $15 an hour minimum wage. I also support him on the PRO Act that he's pushing forward as well. And again, these are all big pieces of legislation that's changing. We've been talking about, I don't believe the minimum wage has been raised since Secretary Wright was the secretary, or it might have been a modest increase after that. So it's certainly long overdue. We need to continue to push this. And again, the American people are supportive of it. I mean, as a legislator here in Massachusetts, I support it. As a mayor, I support the $15 minimum wage in Massachusetts. So again, we're going to continue to work on that.
I mean, you say you don't have the votes for it. I understand that point, but isn't it the job of the president to get those votes? He ran on $15. He tried to get it through. These are not Republican votes you're missing. These are Democrats. These are people like Chris Coons, the president's closest ally in the Senate, who didn't vote for the $15 minimum wage when he had the chance earlier this year. Shouldn't a president who believes in it do more than just talk about it?
Well, he's doing more than talking about. There's lots of conversations going on. As I said earlier, the president is a president that inherited one of the largest unemployment number in the history of our country. He's working to get people back to work. He's working to make sure that we're laying down the foundation for, as I said, the recovery plan to respond to COVID-19 and the jobs plan, the families plan. So his agenda is broad and the agenda is wide and the agenda needs to be fulfilled. And again, we're 100 plus days into the new administration. So he has an ambitious agenda with a lot to do, and we're going to continue to work. And I'm personally going to be working hard to make sure that we can continue to push to make sure we get a minimum wage, make sure we get the budget passed, make sure we get the American Families Plan and other things.
Oh, boy. So, a lot of conversations going on. Definitely going to talk about it. I do like that he admitted you could barely live on a $15 minimum wage. So we're having conversations about giving people something you could barely live on. Like, how's that for building back better? And this was the supposedly progressive labor secretary that he put in rather than Bernie Sanders. But, I mean, it's really, Democrats went after Mitt Romney as a flip-flopper. Biden, what is this other than flip-flopping? If you got one structural change out of Biden, the best chance was a $15 minimum wage because that's what he said. But he can do it right now. The Democrats can push it through. All he would have to do is wrangle a couple Democrats, shame them publicly. Joe Manchin, it does seem, when cornered and when specifically cornered in West Virginia, people who used to work for AOC created a PAC that went on the air with radio ads in West Virginia against Manchin for being against the $2,000 checks. And then he started moving away from that position. But obviously, he could, they said, the Senate parliamentarian says we can't do it through reconciliation. Then why aren't they trying to do it as part of the infrastructure bill? Or why aren't they trying to do it as a standalone bill? They could attach it to anything, the defense budget, and try and put it through with 51 votes using reconciliation. They already said we're not going to use any more reconciliation bills for the rest of fiscal year 2021, meaning that the first time you'll be able to get another reconciliation bill would be in the fall. I mean, there's no urgency, and he's saying what $15 minimum wage is, you could barely live on that, and it wouldn't even go into effect for 5 years. It's disgusting. It's absurd. And Biden, other than Mehdi Hassan, is not being challenged on it whatsoever.
It's really telling that they'll outright admit that if it had kept up with Wall Street bonuses, that it would be over $30 and inflation would be well over $26. But it's still only, we need to keep talking about it. And that's to give themselves wiggle room. They don't want to make any promises, not that they have any qualms about breaking their promises anyway. We all remember that after Biden promised the additional $2,000 for COVID relief, that turned into $1,600. And, we meant, you had already gotten, the other money, and they sent a letter justifying that. So we know they have no qualms lying and backtracking, but now they've taken it to a level where they will admit the problem to get the MSNBC watcher, the NBC watcher, or the Peacock watcher, or whoever, which is all the same under the same umbrella, to nod along and say, oh, yes, these things are bad. This is bad. Oh, they're going to keep talking about it. How great. But the average comfortable person who isn't living paycheck to paycheck and who doesn't have to work at Chick-fil-A, or who isn't working at the Whole Foods in the gentrified area and isn't a Black or brown person and doesn't have to think about the fact that they're working at the Whole Foods and can't, working 40 hours at the Whole Foods and still can't make a living. That's all that person has to do. That's all the watcher has to do is, oh, great, here Joe Biden's in office now, and his labor secretary is saying good things. They're still going to think about it. They're admitting that there's a problem. Great, things are going fine, because they don't have to live that life. They don't have to sell the $9 chocolate bar to the rich person that's taken over their neighborhood. They don't have to deal with it. And so Joe Biden's people, they're all about saying the right things and doing nothing. And this is just another example of that.
And also, I want to make a point, Colin, if you could show the CNBC article. Biden goes on offense against economic critics, argues rising wages shows his agenda is working. So basically, Biden did a speech yesterday defending his economic policies, whatever those are. He said the bottom line is the Biden economic plan is working, he said in Cleveland. We've had a record job creation. We're seeing record economic growth. We're creating a new paradigm, one that rewards the working people in this nation, not just those at the top. Republicans and business groups claim that the enhanced federal unemployment benefit in Biden's American Rescues Plan are to blame for a labor shortage that has forced corporations like McDonald's and Bank of America to raise their minimum wage. How terrible. Some economists fear increasing wages could lead to further inflation. Biden flatly rejected this view. Quote, when it comes to the economy we're building, rising wages aren't a bug, they're a feature. The president went on to renew his call for Congress to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Again, like he has no agency in the matter. And I don't want to minimize the fact that some companies have increased their wages, Jen, but the reality is the reason that they've increased their wages is because for once, workers have had a choice not to go back for shit wages because they've had the temporary unemployment. I was texting with Steve Grumbine, friend of the show with Real Progressives, who said, yeah, I mean, think about the unemployment. If that were a UBI, for example, UBI might, I mean, he's for a federal jobs guarantee, but the unemployment insurance is essentially like a little mini temporary UBI that's allowing workers have a little more choice because they have that unemployment insurance to not rush back to a job at $10 an hour or whatever in retail or fast food or whatever. But we're already seeing a lot of those states are ending that $300 a week, which wasn't enough anyway. So yeah, some of these places have increased the wages. Once that temporary relief that the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC made into the New Deal, the COVID relief bill, once that's gone, I mean, there's no leverage for working people because we still don't have a real union movement in this country, and they're not going to have unemployment or stimulus checks or anything like that to fall back on.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you'll see the right wingers coming out with these charts or whatever saying, oh, no one's going back to work. They're all just, this is why social programs don't work. This is why social programs aren't good. All of these people who were receiving unemployment are just sitting at home on their asses now. They don't want to go back to work. Restaurants can't find anybody to hire. And it's like, yeah, of course. First of all, a lot of that is total BS. Second of all, in the cases where it is not BS, why wouldn't any person who needs to stay home to take care of their children, why would someone go into work to make $350 that week when they could stay home for $300 that week and not pay for daycare when they're a struggling single mother or some situation like that?
Right.
Why would that be a negative moral thing to point to for a Republican? That should be a negative moral thing to point to for not necessarily the small business owner or whatever, but for the entire system. This system is broken. A person should be able at any job, go to work 40 hours, whatever, a full work week, and make a living in any situation. Nobody should have to work 3 full-time jobs, 2 full-time jobs, and still barely scrape by.